One thing I was sort of curious about with your innovation is sort of how sort of like smart technologies could be integrated into like a heating technology. Um, right now it seems like I've seen some thermostats that sort of like learn your preferences, but I haven't seen many that sort of integrate outdoor conditions into how a building heating and cooling works. I've maybe only seen it in
Yeah.
some smart buildings on the West Coast that try to work passively.
There's sort of a growing thing where like there's not a whole lot of value in reading the outside temperature, or you're reading the outside conditions because ultimately like the job of the thermostat or whatever is just to keep the inside at the temperature the homeowner wants.
Hmm.
But the thing that is kind of gaining steam is like interactivity with the utility.
Hmm.
So the electric company is, like in California a few weeks ago, they had those kind of rolling brownouts.
Hmm.
And that, so if they had a good, they call it demand response is the general name for this technology, right?
Yep.
It's the ability for the utility to say, hey, we're running low on electricity. Can everybody turn some stuff off? And so like the thermostat can adjust downward
Hmm.
and or downward for heating or upward for cooling, right?
Hmm.
Um, and we already have like a super primitive version of this with Saver Switch, where like if there's a grid disaster, Excel can shut off air conditioning to most of their customers.
Oh, really?
Uh,
I'm familiar with that.
yeah, so it's called Saver Switch, and it's a program they've had for years, like decades probably.
Hmm.
And yeah, they hardly ever use it, but they could. Like right now, it's sort of like an emergency. It's like on or off. Like everybody's shut off or nobody is. And so, it can be a lot smarter. Like maybe if the grid isn't in total emergency breakdown mode, maybe it's just like they're going to have to spin up one extra power plant. They can scale everybody down like a couple degrees
Hmm.
rather than just shutting everybody off. So and there's all kinds of stuff like that in that general vein.
Yeah.
And that'll be a bigger deal as there's more solar and wind too, right? Like now, even here in Minnesota, we've got a lot of wind, and an okay amount of solar, but it's still like there's nothing. We don't have enough wind and solar where we're shutting it off on days when we have too much.
Hmm. Hmm.
So
I was pleased the other day. I looked at my Excel bill. I'm a subscriber to the WindSource program, and uh,
yeah.
I had a credit on my bill that was about a month's worth of electricity. I guess there was a surplus in that program last year, so they
Oh,
issued credits to customers. So that was neat to see.
nice. I'm the auto pay is the death of me. I end up never like I don't even look at the
Yeah,
bill. Like it just gets paid and
yeah,
I mean I should look at it, right? To make sure it's not like out of whack.
yeah.
But it's like this with everything, right? Like electric, cable, it, all that auto pay stuff.
Hmm.
Something goes wrong, I don't realize it for months.
One question I wanted to ask you is sort of like my view is that by definition, clean tech is climate tech in a way. Um,
Yeah.
and I'm wondering, like, if what you've seen in the sort of in the media or in the public discourse around like the emerging climate tech sector and like how we view that.
Right. I mean, I guess to me the difference is there's a lot of stuff that is like environmentally focused that I would call clean tech that doesn't really have much, if anything, to do with climate.
Yeah,
Like, you know, toxic waste type of stuff
yeah,
or like water conservation. I mean,
hmm,
I guess you can say that's like you can tie it into climate if you try, but it's not really focused on greenhouse gas
yeah.
reductions.
So do you think that
Um,
like low and no carbon power sources are sort of they fit in both into clean tech and
oh yeah,
climate tech?
Yeah, I'd say climate tech is like a subset of clean tech.
Hmm.
Um, and I think the reason for it is that, like I've seen this climate tech branding, I guess to say, is that clean tech is what everybody was calling it 10 years ago, and there
Right.
was sort of a bust cycle with it.
Hmm.
And so I think they didn't want to go back to that name and spook off all the investors who lost money on clean tech back in 2012.
Right. Right. I think that makes sense. Um, I think there's also you're seeing sort of a resurgence of like awareness amongst the tech community in general around climate issues, and I've noticed a lot of sort of movements towards uh, people sort of leaving established tech firms and trying to understand what the landscape looks like, and trying to understand, how do they plug in. There's one group called Work on Climate. I've seen some folks that left Google that are sort of trying to plug into projects. And then there's another one, I forget what it's called,
On
but
the phone, no, no.
it's sort of like
Is it over there?
what it's like people working at developers at established tech firms that like want to also contribute to projects. So I view those two communities as kind of compatible. Um,
Yeah, yeah, totally. And I mean, that's kind of where I found myself. Like, I'm a software guy, and 5 years ago, I was like, well, I like doing software, but I want to, I mean, this climate stuff is important, and I got to figure out a way to contribute to that.
mhm.
And now I'm sort of mostly outside of the pure software stuff. And I think there's a lot of, like you said, a lot of people that want to do that.
Yeah. I think on the
It's,
investor side, I'm less. I've started to see some people, some successful entrepreneurs that have exited previously, and they're sort of like looking for a new problem to support, and they've
mhm.
sort of found. I'm thinking of like My Climate Journey and some of
Yeah,
these other efforts to sort of educate the investor space, and I've seen some climate focused investors on the West Coast. Um, but as an investing niche, it's been still sort of a challenge for me to network with those investors that are sort of have a pre-existing expertise in one of the solution sets, and then also want to sort of contribute as an angel, for example.
for sure. Yeah, and it's I think there's it's such a well understood idea of how to like evaluate and scale like a software as a service business. Like you
Hmm.
can look at, well, like the margins are huge, right? And so all the costs are like, well, how much does it cost to get a new customer, and how long do you keep them, and how much do you charge them a month?
Hmm.
And then you do the 10-second math on that, and you're like, yes, this is a winner, or no, it's not.
Right.
Uh, so much of what's going on or what's needed in the climate space is not just pure SaaS, and so uh, they don't have as much of a framework to invest in, or
Yeah. I think
have.
I think it's also important to like find out from the investor like what sort of impact they want to drive. I think that some might specifically be looking at decarbonization. Um, some might be looking more at sort of like energy independence or resilience. I think there's it's kind of a neat space because it is the scope can get quite big, and you can really dig into like what people care about and try to find an investor that's a good match to the sort of the impact that your company is trying to have.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. So, the last time we talked, you kind of told me about you've got three different things going on, right? Like there are two companies and the nonprofit. Like
Yeah.
what's your number one thing that you are like mostly invested in or mostly like pushing
Yeah.
on?
I think like I'm really trying to fuel Weather Vane Labs, which is a
Okay.
startup I co-founded with my youngest brother, and we are really working to make weather personal. And I think weather is sort of the way that people experience climate changes. Certainly, I know over the course of my lifetime, we've seen fewer very very cold days here in the Twin Cities. We've seen more hot days and a lot of hot nights, especially. And I think that, that impacts people differently depending on where they live. We have a really well-developed urban heat island here in the Twin Cities. So
Yeah.
I think that there's opportunity to help, teach people about their sort of local weather conditions and how they can sort of fit their life and their interests to that. So I think like sort of the status quo in weather right now is sort of hyper local conditions, giving you weather based on your individual location. We envision a future where people get meteorological data and interpretations of that data that are really tailored to individuals' characteristics, tailored to individuals' activities, and really kind of helping them get outdoors confidently and comfortably. And I think that would not only help to build kind of climate resilience in a way, but also really help to drive outdoor engagement, which I think has been shown to be sort of a predictor of the way people vote, the way people look at their local environment, and sort of the concern that they express for it. So I think it could be a real catalyst for broader sort of climate work. So that's definitely my sort of number one thing right now. We're working on a National Science Foundation grant proposal and have been doing a lot of customer discovery to sort of make the case, as you were talking about earlier, for this enterprise that we're looking to launch.
Cool. So like, what's the revenue model with that? How do you make money?
So it would be a SaaS model. It would be, sort of your subscription model or membership model. I think that our core target market is sort of your typical U.S. outdoor consumer that spend anywhere from $100 to $200 a year on technology purchases related to their outdoor activities, and so we view this as sort of complementing your sort of purchases that go into either helping people sort of track their time outdoors or helping them to be more comfortable outdoors with a technology purchase.
Sure.
So it would be freemium. Freemium would be definitely the revenue model that we're looking at, and building in sort of a free trial period, and then trying to really kind of quantify what that conversion rate is over to more of a paid plan. I think it could be. That would be the direct revenue. There could be indirect sources of revenue, matching advertisers, whether it's, outdoor recreation companies or outdoor retailers or product companies that want to help match, a product with someone who we know in these weather conditions is going to go do this certain activity, help kind of intelligently market to them. So I think there are opportunities for indirect revenues as well, but initially we're really focused on this idea of combining sort of our proprietary physical models, machine learning models to learn about what makes a consumer comfortable outdoors, and helping to kind of combine those things to really help produce a sort of a next generation weather service that's deeply personal.
Okay. Oh, that's cool. I'm thinking like maybe another potential thing is like if an outdoor brand, I could see this like offering it as part of like a lifestyle thing, overall lifestyle package, right? Like REI, for instance. Like if I could see, and this kind of ties into the branding or the advertising thing, I guess. I mean, if they had this type of service available for people who like bought something from REI, that I could see them getting value out of it too. Totally.
So I think we could definitely bundle with various services and look at that as sort of a bonus feature. I think that once we learn, initially we really want to focus on more of a consumer technology, but once we learn from consumers, I think we could develop new services targeted at more enterprise, like outdoor workers, for example. Especially as conditions start to change, it could be something that employer right now pretty much makes the employee kind of figure out, well, if I'm working outdoors, what do I need to wear, or personal protective equipment. But I think we're getting very close to regulations where agencies like OSHA are really going to be putting more emphasis on the employer to help make sure that their labor is protected. So um,
Got a
nice
car alarm.
car alarm in the background. Yeah. Joe, what maybe you could talk a little bit more about kind of what you're focused on in the climate tech arena, and what sort of your plan for that.
I can. First, I want to invite. So I see we have 6 people watching, and there are now going to be 3 of us on because I've just admitted Ben. So it sounds like, hi Ben.
Hello.
So it sounds like it looks like there are maybe 3 other people. I invite you to come join share your audio video if you want to join the conversation. If you'd rather not, that's fine. But obviously this is, we're just kind of all having an informal chat about what we work on and, trying to build some community. So on that note, I guess, Ben, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure.
Tell us what you're up to.
Yeah. Sorry for the late arrival. Thanks for letting me in.
Problem.
Interested in meeting you and others here. So I spent 30 years in marketing and branding and all in the technology world, and then got into smart building technologies when I was at 75F. And then that opened my eyes to the amount of waste and energy and maintenance costs and everything else, and the horrible air quality and environments that are created in buildings. So focused my energy on smart building technologies and sustainability and energy efficiency, and have launched a business called Minify Energy, along with my business partner Jeremy Davis, who's been doing building audits and implementation work for, and so we basically do, audit. It's a service-based business, so it doesn't have a lot of the high-tech SaaS model in it, aside from some of the technologies we deploy currently, though we've got that on the roadmap for build-out to have more of that over time. But we basically do audits and identify low-hanging fruit for LED retrofits, HVAC controls. We do EV charging stations, solar, really just a holistic energy assessment with the energy bill audits, and look for errors and emissions. Sometimes there's found money in the tax rates, or if someone's using water for like brewing or car wash and isn't properly categorized, there's opportunities there. So it's kind of a holistic energy efficiency, savings, and management solution set. And we kind of orchestrate it, identify grants, rebates, and financing, and just once you spell that out for people, even in 2020, it's tough times, right? But the financing is at 0 and 1%. You can finance it all with energy savings. It can be a cash flow neutral or even cash flow positive model to add enhancements to environments. And so that's what we're working on. And now we're actually bringing pathogen abatement solutions to fight COVID in terms of HVAC, air quality. Some of the control systems, including 75F, have pathogen a mode now that optimizes outside air. And then there's technologies that you may have heard about, like bipolar ionization, UVC lighting. There's an article today in St. Paul paper around that, and filtration and other solutions that can be used for the return air and to make these environments safe and even better than they were. Not only pathogen abatement, but energy savings, odors, allergens, and things like that, just making environments better for everyone. So it goes to sustainability and human resilience, in addition to the building operational energy costs too. So that's the business we're in. We're trying to launch out. We've been kind of agile and adapting to the COVID era, where even though the buildings are unoccupied, it's hard to get in there to do the audits and implementations. And with these technologies, it'll make it easier to return to a better environment.
Ben, have you worked also with sort of property management companies? I know there's definitely been a lot of new housing being built in the Twin Cities, and I wonder to what extent
Yep.
If there are conversions from office space to housing in the future, is that a sort of market for you as well?
Definitely for multifamily housing. Yeah, we don't really focus on individual residential, but we do work with some property managers, some that own and some that manage multi-unit housing. So a lot of the work that we've been doing there has been focused on lighting and LED retrofits. Right now, there's like 80% rebates. You can pretty much cover the costs and see ROI in 1 to 2 years, and then ongoing savings. But yeah, we're doing a lot of work with multifamily and property management companies that have both commercial and multifamily housing. So we're getting into that more in doing some controls work as well to add remote monitoring management, facilities management solutions there too. So the primary focus historically has been more office buildings. Jeremy's got a lot of experience with nonprofits and churches and so forth from his previous implementation work. But yeah, it's more a retrofit opportunity than new build. I mean, we are trying to do some speccing in of solutions on new build, but there's so much opportunity and faster turn and impact that you can make, especially when there's a history in an existing building. That's really where our primary focus is in trying to get the existing buildings up to reduced consumption and then potentially even energy generation and better environment creation. But it's just a little tougher with the multifamily trying to get individual energy use from, because you can do common area spaces pretty easily, but individual tenants have their own energy. So it's harder to one, get the energy read and monitoring across all those spaces, and then also get in for implementation work across the board.
Sure. I'm curious, like, what would you guess like the market saturation rate is for LED lighting? It's amazing to me that anybody would not. Yeah, it should be huge, right? Like, who hasn't done it?
I don't think it's even at 50%. Maybe it's at 50%, even from a generation 1 LED. I mean, and even those people who did LED upgrades, 3-4 years ago, the technology is advanced where, now you're down to like 9-watt bulbs, and it's worthwhile looking at again, because we're taking already converted LED that might be at, 40 or 25 watt and bringing them down, to less than half of that again. And then the incentives are insane. So yeah, I don't know the actual percentage. Yeah, you'd think it would be 90%, right? Given the time and incentives, but it's nowhere close to that. So there's a huge amount of opportunity out there in the marketplace. And in both of those stages, there's still quite a few that aren't, people that are running stuff 24/7, no sensing, no light or occupancy sensing, no scheduling, and between lighting and HVAC, which each make up a pretty major chunk of building consumption, there's huge opportunity to still do that kind of retrofit work. I think some of the innovative approaches are trying to do virtual audits and how can you do virtual assessments and get that through data and remote diagnostics, right? And get the visibility and be able to sort and assess and make recommendations remotely. But it's insane. I mean, when we go through the financials, they almost say it's just too good to be true. It's kind of crazy that people just don't act on it, because it's like zero out of pocket. And it's even sometimes a positive cash flow with a rebate or a grant. There's just a lot of incentives to do well. So it pays to do well. And it's just a matter of trying to get that, that communications and outreach out there.
Yeah, I think in the state of Minnesota, where there's a lot of leadership on that front. I think at the national level, we've seen sort of a rollback of legislation and rulemaking. And so I think there's a unique opportunity in Minnesota now in our local ecosystem, with the governor having a climate change sub-cabinet and having state agencies taking another look at this. I think there's definitely a real opportunity for some new programs to help catalyze some of this growth.
we're in a very positive place. I mean, Minnesota is the Midwest growth we've had from community solar, and I think the earlier solar panel with Eric from IPS Solar. They the growth has been immense from solar, now EV charging going forward. Walls and both Minneapolis, St. Paul, and other cities are all putting the 2040 and climate resilience plans out there pretty aggressively. There is a session tomorrow with Smart North at 12:30 where we're going to have Russ Stark, Chief Resilience Officer from St. Paul, and Kim Havey, Sustainability Director from City of Minneapolis, as well as Nina Axelson will be on that from Evergreen Energy, Deepinder Singh from 75F, and Tracy Nordstrom from Towerside. And we're going to be talking about the cities and their plans and the opportunities for entrepreneurs around smart technologies, smart city enablement for sustainability and resilience. And it's all kind of in this back to better theme of how can we return to buildings and create communities that are not only back to normal but much better than what we had before.
Mm-hmm.
But you're right, we're in a good place. We're in a good state for these things to happen. So pretty optimistic about it here.
I have one sort of like tech side question, Ben, and I'm curious, like how big are the boilers, the heating systems at a typical place that you're working with? So I'm working, I do residential heat stuff, and so I'm working on a product that's like 60,000 BTUs an hour. And I'm in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, well, one day I want to do the commercial market. And how big are those systems really? I know it varies a lot, but
so we focus on buildings that are usually in the like 50,000 square feet to 250,000 square feet, or kind of the sweet spot for solutions that we implement. We definitely do some they're smaller than that too, or bigger. But I actually don't do the engineering work. I don't know the as much of the specs on that as I do on, I know we've got, for instance, 75,000 square foot building client that's got 23 heat pumps. They've got a geothermal system. So they've got geothermal and solar and R21 roof and walls. They've got a really good sustainability story, and we're bringing lighting and controls into the mix there too. Those guys have 23 heat pumps that are they're typically 5-ton units there.
Sure.
Another implementation with a healthcare group is we're dealing with rooftop units in that scenario. There's like 8 of them. A couple larger ones that are, I think they've got probably 60 tons total in capacity from a rooftop unit perspective.
Okay.
Economizers on those, but I don't necessarily have the BTU numbers offhand. Sorry, I can.
Oh no, that's fine. I mean, a ton is 12,000 BTUs. So you tell me 60 tons.
There we go.
That's
good
enough.
So we're dealing, and we've done some that are much larger than that, but that's often where they'll fall. And then and then we can size systems around that for variety.
Okay.
I'm happy to do follow on with you, share a few more specs.
No, that's okay. I got the general idea. That's what I was looking for.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting. And this we're doing a presentation on Thursday too to this event conference center group on bipolar ionization, pathogen abatement solutions. The interesting thing about bipolar ionization, I don't know if you've looked at that at all, but it's got mold, allergen, all these VOC and odor control, like Minnesota Wild has it installed in their locker room, right? US Bank has it installed, but so it's got all these qualities, but it also because it treats and allows return air to get back toward the quality of outside mountainous air. Most systems can't refresh the outside air at the level CDC and ASHRAE guidance are providing and directing to do flushing of the environments right now. So it's interesting to see bipolar ionization actually refreshes that air with the ions created, reducing the need for outside air actually has an energy efficiency gain of up to like 30%. And so now there's even, rebate facilitation from an energy efficiency perspective that's layered on top of all those benefits you get from the COVID. So it's interesting to see just, where the indoor air quality and pathogen abatement COVID world is meeting the energy interests. Well, a lot of the solutions require more energy to fight it off, and, increased ventilation and compressors and so forth. It's interesting to see a technology that blends both interests.
Sure.
I don't mean to dominate this conversation.
No, that's
just a little excited about what we're doing.
That's cool. Seems like this pandemic is a great time for building owners to update their systems.
It really is. I mean, the financing is insane right now. There are so many incentives and so much financing, and the solutions are there. If you've got even if it's partially occupied, the ability to get in there, check it out, do the implementation is so much easier now than when it's fully occupied. Should we ever get back to that? Which we will.
Yeah.
But yeah, the timing is good. There's also special like triple rebates available for buildings that were damaged in the unrest.
Sure.
Recently. So we've got another panel going on tomorrow for the Smart North around rebuilding and resilience in Midway corridor. And that particular energy piece isn't part of it, but there's, Excel and CenterPoint are offering special rebates for those folks that have damage as well. So it's a really interesting time, but it's very opportune for anyone who's a building owner or property manager to take another look at how they can do upgrades and enhancements with smart technologies and LED and renewables. I mean, even solar is coming down for just the payback period, well under 10 years.
Yeah.
Just seeing some in the 7-year range. And so there's some really creative ways to finance. And it is good timing. If there's anyone who's in the commercial real estate and property management world out there, entrepreneurs who are looking at that as well, there's some neat things that can be done. Do we have any other participants that are lurking?
We've got a few lurkers, but that's okay. People like to watch.
Want to join in? It's the button in the upper right to enable audio and video. I think it's a request.
This hop-in platform is actually pretty good. I was worried because it's like a new startup that they're working with, but it's been pretty flawless.
Yeah, it's been working well. It's there's just a lot of choices for where to go, right?
Yeah.
And if you're going to go network, then you're out of the stage or sessions area or the expo area. I guess I need to learn to navigate virtual spaces better.
I think I find a lot of the events overlap just slightly. That you got people jumping around quite a bit, and for a facilitator, I guess it's more challenging. I guess for someone else, you can kind of just jump in and out however you'd like. But that's another thing I've noticed this week.
Well, it's nice that they're recorded. Hopefully, there'll be the opportunity for people to raise it up and do some outreach. And have,
I'm going to miss the Smart City one tomorrow, but I definitely want to watch the recording.
Yeah, that'll be recorded. So there's actually 5 sessions through the day tomorrow. I'm focused on the sustainability resilience one at 12:30, and then I help pull together the Midway one that happens 2 to 3.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
But, there's also a meetup at end of day, like a 4 to 5 entrepreneur meetup and a meet and greet kind of thing like this.
Oh, cool.
For those in Smart City, but there's a lot of overlap with sustainability and climate.
Yeah. Nobody wants to build a smart city that's polluting a lot. It's not a very smart city.
Right. So, but it's there's some interesting presentations going on there tomorrow. Check them out if you get a chance. Any other topic strings or points you guys want to cover? I'm happy to share other reference and resources related to climate tech if you guys are interested.
Well, Brian had a question. It was kind of right before you
Yeah.
joined, and
Yeah.
I forgot what it even was now.
Well, I guess one thing with Ben joining now too is just I think there's this sort of question of what's in scope for climate tech, and if there are things you think are less, maybe there's been less investment in, there should be more, or things that are less well known about climate tech. I'm always kind of curious to see how other people, when they look out there, what the landscape looks like.
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm trying to remember where I heard someone was making a call to investors to look beyond pure SaaS models and understand that, you know, hybrid hardware and equipment and IoT are factors. And I think, and I focus more on the building space from a climate tech perspective, and it definitely has drag, right? You've got the drag of actual hardware installation and lead time and everything, scoping that out. Whereas SaaS, you can do a freemium trial and shut them down, you know, change services on the fly. So I think that IoT role, you know, any solutions that have IoT, there's such a physical component to so much of it. When you get to water and air treatment and energy management, that's, you know, it's how do you make that faster and more efficient? I mean, I spoke to about virtual assessments, remote assessments, as much as you can get to that. You know, I think that's one topic that's really intriguing. But I guess, you know, you think about circular economy, I'm not as involved in. I mean, definitely involved with sustainability groups like you know, that are involved in circular. I focus more on energy and efficiency in buildings. I think, yeah, climate tech. Do you guys know Darcy, the folks who were in the Minnesota Cup? They've got a geothermal solution.
I'm familiar with them.
It's pretty intriguing. Yeah, I mean, the sources of energy and thermal transfer opportunities, both in geothermal, you know, ground source loops. Theirs is aquifer based, which is pretty intriguing and very efficient. Potential deployments with that. So, you know, I think energy and thermal transfer are definitely in the mix. And then, you know, when you get the technology and SaaS overlay, you know, 75F is where I, you know, migrated into that from an IT background, from a software and IT and marketing background, that kind of just opened my eyes to. I never thought I'd be walking on rooftops and into boiler rooms, and doing that kind of work. But it's just fun to see, you know, where that meets the physical world. So I guess that combination of digital and physical, and the creation of digital twins is, I've got some other folks who are, you know, Better Building Data, BBD. Rick Mann there has a scanning technology where they create digital twins, virtual environments, asset tagging, and so forth. So you've got efficient management of those commercial real estate spaces, and then design around that. It's not as much climate focused, but it's a factor that can improve the efficiencies in operations and environment through, you know, as much as you can digitize and automate the unknowns or things, you know, the as-builts, because you look at designs and actual, and even looking at the energy modeling from a design and then tracking standpoint, the vast majority of people don't do that in a commercial environment unless they're being, you know, forced to with a stick by the 30 some cities that are requiring benchmarking reporting now. It's, you know, that energy modeling and design and looking at that from a climate and energy perspective is pretty intriguing. I just think there's so much waste and so much opportunity for entrepreneurs in the existing built environment, let alone the next gen. I mean, there's a lot of focus on new codes and stretch standards for SB 2030 and otherwise, but there's some pretty cool stuff from climate tech. And even one of the presenters for Midway's got proposed apartment buildings. James Garrett Jr. from Formula Design. He's got some apartment buildings where he's hoping to use the the robotic agricultural rooftop garden. I don't know if you've seen that, but that gets a little more into the environmental climate ag side of the things, but it brings together AI and robotics into a distributed, open source environment for enabling anyone to have automated food production in just about any space. So climate tech has a wide range. I guess some of the things I'd also look at it in the Twin Cities, USGBC for Green Building Council is one big one. CERTS, I think, was mentioned in chat earlier today in the sustainability string. Clean energy resource teams. Clean Energy Economy Minnesota is a good lobbying legislative organization representing business interests. They do the Clean Energy Day at the Capitol. I've done some work with those guys. If you're not familiar, the group at SEAM is really good. And then haven't been tracking the Clean Tech Open this year or recently, but that between Minnesota Cup, Clean Tech Open, have been some nice innovations in the climate tech. And I'd be interested to hear other kind of resources you guys are involved in or aware of that would be worthwhile to take a look at.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing those resources. I'm going to drop off here, but it was
Okay.
nice to chat with you, Ben and Joe, and I'll put a little link to my startup in the chat, and look forward to crossing paths with both of you again.
Likewise, excellent. Thank you for your time. It's a pleasure meeting you.
Great.
Talk to you later.
Right,
Yep. See you, Brian. Yeah, and there are a lot of resources about that help, like with implementation of stuff that are local here, like certs and that kind of thing. The thing that I've sort of struggled with is finding is like trying to get anybody local that's involved in like the startup aspect of it. And that's kind of why I did this thing. I'm hoping to find some more of these people and meet them. So
right.
We'll see. It's a process. There's not much of a sector here in the Twin Cities, I don't think, for clean tech. Like there's Darcy, they're doing some cool stuff, but
right. There's pockets of it coming about, but there's historically been a much heavier emphasis on medtech, healthcare, and ag in the Twin Cities that needs to come around to recognize a little bit more on the clean tech side. I know both, I think Darcy and 75F have investment from CET, Clean Energy Trust, out of Chicago. They've got a strong investment incubator component. 75F's been involved with NREL and some of their initiatives. And I know Mary Grove has been a big supporter. And Steve. So there's, I think, and with the Rise of the Rest and, participation there. So I think we're seeing a little bit more of an ecosystem come together, but I'd love to see a stronger clean tech, climate tech ecosystem, investment, investor orientation coming to fore. And, maybe we can build that out. Just as a couple of years ago, we had a single track on smart cities, and now it's turned into the creation of Smart North, a new organization focused on smart city, public, private, civic collaboration around that. So maybe we can work on that in the clean tech space.
All right. Well, I actually also have to get going. I have a meeting for my real, my day job coming up here.
Yeah, I've got some of that too.
It was great talking to you, and
likewise.
We'll stay in touch, and good luck with all the energy retrofits and all that stuff.
All right. Hopefully we'll see you in some of the sessions tomorrow and otherwise. All right.
Yeah. I'm also going to paste my info in the chat. So if any of you lurkers want to get in touch, that'd be great.